Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEC. We're glad that you are joining us today. We are going to be talking about building community in divisive times with Liz Vanderwerken, who is our proactive route director. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Liz, and she's going to kind of explain. I think it'll be a little bit of a discussion. So if you want to ask questions, you definitely can. So go ahead, Liz.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to just first introduce myself and just talk about what my job is at MWIG. As Rachel said, I'm the proactive route director. And that I feel like the route directors are a little bit more of like a mystery. Like our role is a little less visible often in the kind of to members. But what we do, I think, is really central to kind of MWIG's mission. MWIG has four core attributes: faithful, peaceful, proactive, and nonpartisan. So the route directors, there's one of us assigned to each of those values or kind of ethics, and kind of our responsibility is to like help the organization kind of live up to those expectations and ideals in terms of how we're positioning ourselves with the messaging that we're doing, the ways that we're approaching the advocacy work that MWIG is doing, the way we're engaging our community and our members. A lot of what we're doing is kind of behind the scenes, internal to MWIG, but always with that kind of goal in mind of promoting our values of nonpartisanship, peacefulness, faithfulness, and being proactive. As the proactive route director, I do a lot of work with the advocacy team and kind of just participate with them in their meetings and kind of planning and strategy. We also work on a lot of the like official statements, other kinds of official communications that are coming from MWEG. We're involved with some of those. And another thing that I work on is the MWEG's Principles of Ethical Government. We have kind of a series of papers that we're publishing for each of those that kind of talk about those principles in a little bit more depth. And so that's another thing that's important as when we make an official statement, we're often referencing those principles of ethical government and kind of always making sure that as an organization that we're like aligned with that our kind of actions match our words about what we say we are and what we say we're about. So as the proactive route director, I kind of wanted to just like kind of demystify that a little bit and kind of bring that point home that that's like central to our work. I think one of the other things that I'm always thinking about as the proactive route director is like what that word proactive means and how that shows up in our MWEG work and for like each of us as individuals and kind of how as an organization MWEG we're trying to kind of impart and instill those values within our members. Because I think at the end of the day, like our goal is to always help women in the organization understand how to be kind of proactive within your own lives and within your own sphere of influence about the ways that you're engaging with politics and with peacemaking and with other people. And so I wanted to kind of talk today during this grow about some ways that I think we can do that on a more community oriented way. I think a lot of times the proactive route director, like a lot of what I'm doing is like focused on like advocacy and these kind of more formalized ways of doing that. But I think being proactive doesn't only look like reaching out to your elected officials. There's other ways that I think that I've noticed in my own life during this year with a lot of heavy things happening in the country and at the national level in politics. I've been trying to make a concerted effort in my personal life to kind of invest in my community, just like with my time and energy, as a way of kind of bolstering the people around me and myself to feel connected in kind of the name of this grow, I kind of used that term divisive times because I think that's something a lot of us are maybe feeling in our personal interactions with like family members, coworkers, people in our ward. I think anytime we're in contact or communication with other people, there's the potential for like conflict or miscommunication or friction. And so I think I've just been thinking about ways that we can use the kind of opportunities we have in our day-to-day lives as like things that can help build up our community and yeah. So I think if anybody has like questions or comments, like as we're going through this, feel free to use the like raise your hand feature. I think it's under the react button. That's where the raise hand is. And if you want to come on camera, that's also welcome. So as we kind of get into this conversation, I also wanted to give a shout out to our communities team here at MWEG. They do an amazing job at kind of trying to welcome in new members, engage with our members that are here. And so that's happening in both our Facebook discussion group as well as on MWEG Central. And I think MWEG Central is such an amazing resource we have. And there's state community pages and discussion groups through Central that I think are really exciting. I live in Pennsylvania, and so I'm always excited as we have some new members that have joined recently from Pennsylvania, and so I'm thinking about ways that I'm a grad student and really busy, and it's finals right now, so my time is always a little bit strapped. But I'm thinking about like ways I want to try and kind of get more involved with MWEG here in Pennsylvania, because I know there's some other MWEG members that live close by to me. I also wanted to mention MWEG's kind of involvement with Women Building Peace and the Pen Your Power campaign. So if you're here on the Grow, I'm sure many of you are kind of keeping up to date with what MWEG is working on. But for anyone who hasn't heard about that campaign yet, it's kind of the latest project that Women Building Peace is promoting. And it's a great way to like you can request and get these postcards and kind of organize like a postcard writing campaign with friends, family, neighbors to write to your elected officials. And I think that's a really powerful way to, it's a really simple thing, but again, to connect with one another in the process of advocating for political just advocating in the political sphere while also kind of building community. So yeah, I think those are kind of the MWEG related things I wanted to kind of hit home at the beginning of this, but I also wanted to just share some ideas about just building community in general. And then I worked in local government for about 8 years before leaving to go to grad school. And so I also had some ideas that I wanted to share just from my experience working in local government. So I think just thinking about community, there's this something I've been thinking about a lot in the last like 3 months or so is the idea and importance of what's referred to as weak ties. And this concept, I feel like I first heard of it in more of like a business context, like in the idea of like networking and the importance of like these like weak connections to kind of just exposing you to other people, broadening your kind of reach and network. And so then when you're like looking for a job, it's often through these kind of like word of mouth, you know someone who knows someone, and these kind of tangential connections that can be really helpful in like getting leads for a job or something like that. And so but I think that idea has also kind of become extrapolated more broadly. And I've been hearing it more recently used in the context of like social and political networks, thinking about building community. And I really love that. So I am a grad student doing a dual master's in landscape architecture and city planning. And we have this joke in my program that like no one knows what landscape architecture is. So we're constantly having to kind of like define it for ourselves as well as like explain it to other people. But I think kind of at the core of like both of these disciplines that I'm interested in is like cities and places and the ways that we design and shape spaces. And so that's like at a very basic level. And then I think with landscape architecture, you can interpret that in so many ways. A lot of it's like focused on like climate change and thinking about natural systems and how change is experienced over time. But I think, again, just thinking about like in my disciplines, we're interested in like cities and places that people and not people are inhabiting. So like animals and other things. But I think just thinking of public spaces, I think one of the really lovely things that I've encountered in kind of my time in school is just the ways that space can be a great like, connector of people. So I live in Philadelphia, and there's lots of parks near, like around the city, and there's a large park that's a few blocks from my house, and I go there pretty regularly for like the farmers market or to just like go sit on a bench and read my book. And I think what I really love about living in a city is you have all these opportunities for kind of casual interactions with other people who are strangers or neighbors or people you know, but often it's with strangers and people you might never see again. And just something that we've like talked a lot about in some of my classes is that kind of in this age of like the digital world where we're interacting with people in online spaces and like even right now like we're on Zoom talking to each other, and I think technology gives us this amazing capacity for like connecting with people in ways that are really powerful like across time like and space. Like we're able to use technology to connect in really amazing ways, but it's kind of this like double-edged sword where there's all this amazing potential of technology to allow us to interact and connect with other people, but technology, a lot of like the ways that it functions and works can often also result in like isolation and disconnection from kind of reality and the tangible world around us. And so where I'm in this profession where we're thinking about like design and spaces, I think this idea of like tangible connection to other people is really powerful. And so I've been thinking about that a lot, and then kind of bringing it back to this idea of weak ties. And I think I've been thinking about like the way I go about my day-to-day life and the way it brings me in contact with other people really shapes kind of my perception of like what's happening around me. So I live in Philadelphia. It's like this, it's the city of brotherly love. And I think that that nickname really resonates with like my experience of Philadelphia as a place. I think a lot of the people that I encounter, just like strangers or like people at the grocery store, at the farmer's market, or just at the library or when I'm like walking, people are can be like really friendly or they like want to tell you their story. And I think putting ourselves in these places where we can have these kind of casual interactions with other people is a really powerful thing. And I think it's often those like weak ties through which we start to like build rapport with other people and can get exposed to like other ways of thinking or existing that can help kind of broaden our worldview as well as sometimes challenge it. And so I think like in our wards, often we have these, it's a different kind of context in which we have these situations that we get to exist in community with other people who may have different political opinions than us, or they may have a different lifestyle than us, like with whatever that means. Like if just thinking about differences in occupations, in your the way that you like manage your household and family. So yeah, I've just been thinking about the power in those opportunities that as like an introvert or someone that is really busy, like I often might want to shy away from like these kinds of like casual interactions and weak ties. But yeah, that's just something I've been thinking about a lot as like this really important potential and kind of like untapped area for engaging with other people and strengthening my community in a time when things can feel really disconnected and divisive. So I guess I wanted to like kind of share those thoughts and then see if anyone had any kind of like experiences or kind of responses to that or other ideas, like things you've been thinking about, or have you experienced that, and does that resonate with your day-to-day life and situation? Yeah, Tanis, is that right?
That's Thomas, yes. I've just been reading Cheryl Eubank's book for the book club next month, and probably the thing that stood out to me the most was that you are your most powerful where you live. And I'm the Southeast Idaho regional director, and it was really a light bulb for me to think that our small group of people here are the MWEG specialists in Southeast Idaho, and that we have all the connections and the power and the knowledge for this small area, and that's really empowering to think that we have so much more to give here than anywhere else. And so I like that principle. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, does anybody else have anything? I have a story that I just thought of that I can share while people are thinking. So one of my friends in my ward here in Philadelphia, she's in grad school studying journalism, and she has two really young kids. And she posted recently that about an experience or like interaction she had. She was at the park, and her oldest son, who's probably about 3, was like playing on the playground and kind of befriended another child who was playing. And so she got to talking to the other kid's mom. And it was like a woman who recently is a recent like immigrant to Philadelphia, and she's they there was like a little bit of a language barrier, and so they were kind of just like trying to communicate with each other and just like laughing and watching their kids play. But I guess this other mom, as she's trying to kind of get settled in the United States and like support her family, she like recently opened an Etsy shop and was like making homemade candles. And so like my friend like looked up her Etsy shop and like bought some candles from her, and like probably that was like somebody she ran into on the playground. And I don't know if it's like it could be one of those neighborhood playgrounds where they you see the same people all the time, or it could have just been like a chance interaction, and she'll never run into that person again. But I loved the just I thought that story was like really powerful of just this really simple interaction that might not have happened but for like her kid playing on the playground. And but I think it kind of put her in connection and in community to someone who, like a lot of the news headlines right now around the administration's kind of enforcement of their immigration policies, it creates these narratives around like people who are different from a different country or different speak a different language, and these like kind of broad characterizations of people are can be really inaccurate with like your lived experience. And so I loved that she had this really simple interaction with like another mom at the playground that kind of gave her insight into like the reality of someone's day-to-day life who is experiencing some of those same challenges. But I really loved just the way that she shared about that story. Does anyone else have anything that's come to mind?
I just was thinking how I appreciate you pointing out that weak ties are um, an important part of this fabric of community. Um, I think I often put a lot of pressure on myself to like make all the weak ties in my life deep, strong ties. So like every time I'm, at church or having an interaction with somebody, I think like I should really get to know that neighbor better. Like I should know more about what's going on. And I mean, I know there's some studies on like how many people can we actually have in our lives? Like, can we really stay connected to? And even though I know those things, I still have some unrealistic ideas about how deeply connected I should be to everyone. And so this is helping me think a little bit differently about the real value of like all the different ties that I have in my life. And of course I want some good deep ties. And it's okay if my bandwidth is not available for all of the time, for everyone to go deep like that, but that those weak ties actually really um, strengthen our community. I don't know. That wasn't very articulate, but I was just thinking while you were talking. I appreciate that like reframe for myself.
Yeah, Michael, and I feel like that was really articulate, and I love like the way you expressed that. Like, yeah, there's kind of these different levels of like connection, and that like, yeah, sometimes I feel badly about like the limits on my time and ability and just kind of wherewithal. But yeah, just thinking about this differently has helped me kind of even just adjust like the way that I interact with people. Like I feel like I have another friend, I think a lot of you might be familiar with the project Tiny Kindness. So that's one of my friends runs that and started that, and she documents and people submit. It's kind of this crowdsourcing of kind acts of kindness to other people. And I feel like yeah, I feel like weak ties and kind of this idea of kindness have been really related in my mind and the way I've been thinking about it. And so, yeah, I think it's good to like recognize that our aspirations and our reality might be different, but it's okay. Like the ways that we can show up even in these weak ties still can make an impact. Anybody else? I don't want to cut people off if you have thoughts to share.
Can you guys hear me? Let's see.
Yeah.
I could put a video on. I wasn't planning on. Oh, it's like way up there. Sorry, I'm in a new spot. Anyway, I was just recently, well, the post on MWEG most recently talked about like supporting environment through the holiday season, but I often will think about just like supporting people instead of big corporations. So a lot of my Christmas shopping has been through See this year, which has been kind of fun because it's, you know, a lot of times you can make connections specifically to the people. And I was looking for like a stained glass type of nature, some sort of necklace for my daughter. And my eye caught this one um, vendor that was from Kiev in Ukraine. And so I ended up going through her and then saw a couple other things, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this stuff, and got a couple other things impromptu. Was not planning on doing that, but I wrote her a little note saying like our family's thinking about you guys out in Ukraine, and like thank you for bringing beauty into this world despite the fact that you guys are going through really hard times right now. And I didn't even necessarily expect a reply. You never quite know what that's going to look like. But usually you can tell when it's a smaller business versus like some big thing. And she wrote back, and it was like so powerful that it meant so much to her. And it was like little interactions like that that I realized like the our world is so small. Like I'm very much like a hate technology in so many ways. um, but things like that just give me so much hope for the future, and in helping us connect to people. And I think that similarly to that park experience that you were talking about, like we live in an area where our opinions are very different from a lot of people around us. And I keep thinking like just being in the community gives them a different face, gives them a different idea, and it's not easy to do every day. But it also helps me realize like they're wonderful people as well, and we all like have similar fears, similar goals, and so yeah, I think it's so tempting to I definitely find myself getting isolated a lot. But those interactions just always make me realize how important they really are. So,
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashton. I feel like there was like so much in your comment. I think yeah, just thinking about like a lot of what we've been talking about is like socially how these weak ties can kind of like give us these opportunities. But I love that you kind of drew in these other like areas of our lives, like our kind of like economic and
mhm.
financial side. We have these opportunities to like make decisions that can kind of promote these values or like help us access a different kind of aspect of what these weak ties can look like. So I love that. And yeah, just appreciate all your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And turn my video back off.
Okay. Okay,
It's
well,
just
if anyone,
as you
oh
were
yeah.
talking and you said that we have the decision to decide like where we're going to, you know, in this case, spend money or support causes. But I think that all of this, when we're talking about building community rather than, making the divide bigger, and we've talked a lot in MWAG this year about moving in closer and getting to know people. But when you said that we have the choice to do that, that I think that is where um, the things that we've learned through MWAG become really important. Is that when we have the skills to do this, or we even have the thought to do it, that we get to choose whether we do it or not. And as being peacemakers, choosing to move in is something that can really fix these divisive relationships or communities or whatever we're seeing, that we get to be actively choosing to engage and in peaceful ways. And this week I've seen just on some social media some posts where maybe MWAG has been mentioned, where it feels like a pile on of negativity of people who are just in this echo chamber um, of one thought. And I think that, and that's their choice too. But I think if we could, you know, in this case, not engage and not, because I don't think that that's a winning, a winning conversation necessarily. But I just think that if we can be curious and thoughtful about the way that we're engaging, but also choosing to maybe move outside our comfort zones and to, as you say, move in closer, um, that's when we're really going to see the changes that we all are hoping to see, and that we have to be part of it. We can't just wait for, you know, some other women in MWAG to do it and then do, yeah, I mean, that helps to, for a little bit of encouragement, but I think sometimes we have to be really brave and just do it. And um, maybe if we can think of one or two things during the season where maybe we participate in some sort of donation drive or um, whatever it might be, that's a community driven thing, that you start to meet people and you start to hear stories that um, expand our compassion for our neighbors. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I love that, Rachel. And I think something I was thinking about both like with your comment and with Ashton's comment is just these, I think like a lot of our interactions in like online spaces and things, we're getting a very like distorted view of like we maybe this person's political opinion becomes like the loudest thing about them. And maybe that's true like a- as like how they show up in the world, or maybe that's not. And so I think by putting ourselves in proximity to other people, we can allow ourselves to like experience other parts of them as well as for them to see like other sides of ourselves. And so I think it kind of has this like humanizing effect where we learn more about that person, and maybe it helps explain some of their worldview that we don't understand, and maybe it doesn't, but I think it gives us like the opportunity to work on our peacemaking skills and to be in a situation that might not be super comfortable, but allows us to like, yeah, kind of express that curiosity that you mentioned, Rachel. Okay, well, I love all of these comments, and yeah, I hope that like this is a helpful thing for you to kind of like think about, especially as we go into the holidays and Christmas. And I think a lot of this really resonates with like kind of the spirit of Christmas and kind of example of Jesus Christ that we're aspiring to. I think with our last few minutes, I just wanted to mention a couple ideas of like just from my time working in local government, some like easy ways to start getting more involved. So with MWAG, obviously a lot of our work as an organization is focused on like advocacy at the federal level. We have our state communities where there's some states that have a state advocacy team and are organizing around state legislative sessions. And then I think throughout our work of MWAG is the common thread of like wanting to help our members become more empowered actors in your own spheres of influence. And so I think an important part of that is local politics. And I think while I worked in local government, it really kind of drove home like the importance of being involved in local government and the great impact that local government has on our day-to-day lives. And I think there was like a series of like two reels that Emwig posted on like Instagram and Facebook that talked about kind of like things that local government touches, and it had these great lists of like all these things like your parks and the transportation in your city and like all of these other aspects that we can take for granted because it's like we turn on the water and there's water there, but that's something that's happening because of policy decisions and rate making decisions at your local government. So yeah, I was just thinking about this as kind of an extension of this idea of weak ties. Local government is a huge opportunity that we have to invest our time and energy in our communities in a way that has a great impact and can kind of connect us to people that we may not have encountered otherwise. While I worked for the city of Provo for 8 years, and during that time, like I got to know so many people, like residents who were involved in local government, who would come to city meetings, who would send the council members an email about something. And my sisters were visiting me once, and they were joking. They're like, you can't go anywhere. Like, you have to get ready anytime you go anywhere because you run into like 100 people that you know, like just anytime you leave your house. Because I just knew so many people through these like casual interactions in local government. Um, so I think like one of my basic recommendations always is to just subscribe to the newsletters. So for your city council person, for the city itself, for your state legislators, I think newsletters is like one of the easiest low effort ways to like become more informed and to kind of give yourself the capacity to be involved when you do have more bandwidth. But newsletters, it's like I feel zero guilt about deleting them if I don't have time to read them. But like to the extent that like I'm waiting for the bus and I like scroll through my email and I try and just skim whatever the newsletter says that week. And those are like great ways that I stay informed about local issues as well as like, oh, there's a town hall happening next week, or this legislator is thinking about this bill or this policy issue, and so maybe I have thoughts on that and I want to send them an email. So subscribing to newsletters, you don't even have to leave your house, but you can get more involved in local government. I think one of the other things I was thinking about was boards and committees. So most local governments have like volunteer. I think it's typically volunteer. I think if you live in like a big city like New York City, maybe you might get paid for being a planning commissioner or something. But most like cities have organizations within the city government that help kind of direct policy decisions or operations of different city departments or functions. So I think boards and commissions, they're The way that it would work in Provo City was the mayor would get applications for these different boards and commissions and then would submit to the city council like, oh, this is who I would like to appoint to the library board or to the Parks and Recreation board. And then the city council would like reach out to those individuals and kind of get to meet them and then would appoint them to this board or commission. And then they would meet on a regular basis to kind of discuss whatever issues was germane to that board. But I think it's a really great way. Like if you have something that you really care about in your city or something that you're really knowledgeable about, cities are always looking for like community members who have the time and knowledge to be involved in those places. I think it's also like just thinking about MWEG and the way that we're wanting to help women build skills and build knowledge. Boards and commissions in my time working in local government was like kind of the gateway for people to get more involved, who would sometimes end up running for office or for school board or other things in their community. Yeah, Lori, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, I put a link in the chat, and this is just for Utah, but we have a fantastic organization here called A Bolder Way Forward, and they have different spokes. They're tied to the Utah Women's Leadership Project, and their whole purpose is to improve the lives of girls and women in the state of Utah. And in civic and political representation, they have this link to boards and commissions. They have counties, they have Salt Lake opportunities, but just some great ways that people can get involved in that. And I wasn't even aware of that before. And we have members who are serving on some of those boards and really involved in those. And it's kind of nice because you can look at where your interests, like you said, where your interests and your skills lie, and then work towards that area. But I think even I went to a city council meeting last night in a city that I don't really live in, but I live adjacent to. And I haven't lived in this community for almost 5 years, but recognize people from former jobs and different experiences. And you never know when those connections and ties, are going to come back into play. And so just that's just a good way to go and just kind of see what's going on in your community. I had to do it for a social work project. I'm in graduate school right now, and it was very interesting to go within the parameters and look at what are the demographics in the meeting and where's the power in the meeting. Just kind of break it down a little bit like that too is really interesting. So I would encourage anyone to just go and observe sometime and just kind of see what is maybe this is a reflection of my community and where can I invest my time and energy to help support things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Lori. Um, And yeah, I think most like legislative bodies will have time for public comments. So if there's like a specific issue that you care about, you can go to a meeting and give a public comment. But many cities also just have an open comment period. And so maybe it's like the city council isn't talking about something that you have a strong feeling about, but maybe there's like something you're concerned about in your community. You can go to the open comment period and just share that and say, this is something I'm really worried about. And it can kind of like I feel like that comes across a lot more strongly than like an email to your elected officials or kind of civil service employees about like this is something that residents care about and that they're worried about or thinking about. One other point I wanted to mention with the boards and committees, a lot of times the requirements for those will be like listed in your city code or like on the city website. And a lot of times it's like the only requirement is that like you're a resident or you're a taxpayer or you're this or that. Sometimes there's a profession specific requirement for some of those more like development related boards and commissions, but often it's like your qualification could be that like I've lived in this city for X amount of time and I am a frequent user of this service or facility and I have thoughts about how it could be improved or what's great about it that I want to like promote. And so I think just demonstrating that interest it can give you opportunities, again, like Lori mentioned, for like those kind of weak ties. I also think one thing I was thinking about was it can also help kind of build your capacity for like sustained involvement. I think right now at the federal level, it's really exhausting to keep up with like the news cycle and keep up with like every bad thing that feels like it might be happening. But by getting involved in your local government, it's kind of things are kind of operating on a different time scale as well as like a different level of intensity. And so I think it can help us kind of like build capacity for sustained interaction and advocacy within our own kind of sphere of influence. And I think that's a really powerful thing where in these other areas of government, we may be feeling a lot of fatigue. And so I think being able to kind of like build our resilience in that way is really powerful. So I think we're kind of running up against kind of the kind of planned time for this, but if anybody has any other like questions or comments, would love to open it up for the last few minutes. But I think I just want to like emphasize that like everyone, I feel like if you're a woman in MWAG, like you're doing the most. Like I feel like MWAG is attracting kind of the people in our communities who are like involved and high achieving and or like aspire to be. And so I think just showing up is such an important thing. And so thank you all for your time this morning or today. And just for listening and sharing your thoughts. And I hope something in this grow was helpful or encouraging as you are trying to figure out how to be a peacemaker and be proactive in your own sphere of influence.
It's good to see some comments in the chat of people who are finding their town or city newsletters or just looking into some other opportunities. So that's really great. We can put those, I'll put that link for anybody that is in Utah that wants to use some ideas for joining any committees there. Thank you for your comments today. Thank you, Liz, for your time and sharing these ideas. We hope that you guys will take these ideas and just think about ways, kind of just as you see fit and are able in this season, or maybe that can be if you're a resolutions person, add it to your New Year's resolution in January to reach out and be more active in your community if you aren't already. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we will be back next week with another grow. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.